So who was Maui and where did he come from?
The other story that I know about Maui is that he also came from Egypt.
Some insight to these questions came from epigraphic researcher Barry Fell when he deciphered some ancient petroglyphs on Pitcairn Island which told of damage done to one of Maui's ships in a storm. He also deciphered petroglyphs found in a cave called Casa Pintada in the San Fernando Valley in Chile. These were written in Libyan script declaring that Maui claimed 4,000 miles of the Central and South American coastline for Egypt in 231 BC. It can be deduced from petroglyphs and Polynesian legend that Maui's voyage followed a route that looked something like this. After circumnavigating New Zealand for 3 months, it is believed Maui travelled north to Tahiti, on to Hawaii and across to the Americas. He then sailed south for 4,000 miles along the coastline looking for a passage east.
Shalom Mubaraka, Mishpaka, peace and blessings family. In this video we're going to be talking about the most important man in Egyptian history, and that is Maui. He proves that basically Mizraim is in the Americas without a shadow of a doubt. We seen in that video that I just showed that they said that he came from Egypt. He said that he came from Egypt. He left an artifact in Chile saying that he claimed 4,000 miles of land for Egypt. But they say that he came from the modern Egypt. Why would he travel all the way from the modern Egypt to claim land in South America? That doesn't make sense. The area of land that he claimed was from Costa Rica all the way down to the end of the Andes Mountains. You know what I'm saying? So, but Maui did something very peculiar. According to Polynesian legend, he snared the sun. Basically, he took a rope and made the sun stop moving. And this is very similar to the legend that we see in the book of Joshua, where Joshua said to the sun, stop moving, and the sun stopped, right? Because Yah was with us, and Yah listened to Joshua and made the sun stop. But Maui was sent into the Pacific Ocean looking for land, and you know, the Polynesians thought he was a great guy. He did a bunch of miracles, because you know the Egyptians had people that worked for them who could perform miracles. They can do magic. You already know when we read Exodus, the Egyptians had magicians and things of that nature. So he was probably one of them. He was an explorer, an expert sailor, and he also was able to do all kinds of cool things. And Maui was known throughout the entire Pacific Ocean. He was said to have pulled up islands out of the sea. He was said to bring fire out of the sky. He was said to have basically stopped the sun. If the sun stopped and stood still over the Pacific Ocean, it also stood still over Western North America. And if it stood still over Western North America, then it didn't stand still in the Middle East, because the sun can only be in one side of the earth at a time. I hope you guys got that, because that alone proves that the Holy Land is in Western North America. The sun itself proves that the Holy Land is in Western North America. Now, Maui snaring the sun. Maui became restless and fought the sun with a noose that he laid, and winter won the sun, and summer was won by Maui. So he did this in the summertime, and I'm going to explain, furthermore, how that's actually accurate, that it did happen in the summertime. You can Google it, and it says that Maui made the sun slow down. He made the sun slow down. Joshua did the same thing. Now, On page 44, it says on the second sentence, there he watched the burning sun as it came up from Kalau and passed directly over the top of the mountain. The summit of Haleakala is a great extinct crater 20 miles in circumference and nearly 2,500 feet in depth. There are two tremendous gaps or chasms in the side of the crater wall, through which in days gone by the massive bowl poured forth its flowing lava. One of these was Kalau, or Eastern Gap, in which Maui probably climbed to catch the sun. Mount Haleakala of the Hawaiian Islands means house of the sun. Just like in the land of Canaan, they had Beth Shemesh, which means house of the sun. La or Ra is the name of the sun throughout parts of Polynesia. Ra was the sun god of ancient Egypt. The scriptures don't say the names of other gods, but Ra is just a word that means sun, but it's also the word for God. So whether we say Shamash, which is our language, we still saying the name of a god. So sometimes it's kind of, hard not to do it. But anyway, thus it says Ra was the sun god of ancient Egypt. Thus the antiquities of Polynesia and Egypt touch each other, and today no man knows the full reason thereof. So the Polynesians call on the same sun god as Egypt. Now, why would they do that? You know what I'm saying? Even in Hawaii, they call the sun Ra. Like I said in the video where I spoke about the Mayans, the Mayans spoke an Austronesian language, and it's similar to ancient Egyptian, right? And this same type of language was also spoken in the Pacific Islands. So of course they're going to say some of the same words of ancient Egypt, because at the end of the day, they are ancient Egyptians. Those people in those islands are descendants of the true ancient Egyptians from, Mexico, Arizona, Costa Rica, etc. They're descendants from the biblical Egyptians, I should say. And it says no man knows the full reason. I just told you the reason, because they came from America, and most of America is truly Mizraim. Then Maui thought of his sister's hair, the sister Inaaka, whom he cruelly treated in later years. Her hair was long and beautiful. He cut off some of it and made a strong rope. With this he lassoed, or rather snared, the sun and caught him around the throat. The sun quickly promised to be more thoughtful of the needs of men and go on a more reasonable pace across the sky. So basically, he slowed down the sun. Now this is what the Samoan legend says. A Samoan legend says that a woman living for a time with the sun bore a child who had the name Child of the Sun. She wanted gifts for the child's marriage, so she took a long vine, climbed a tree, and made the vine into a noose, lassoed the sun, and made him give her a basket of blessings. So she lassoed the sun, right? Another Pacific Island legend of the sun being lassoed. I'm from Texas. I watch plenty of rodeos. They get on a horse, they lasso the bull running full speed, but they stop it. When you lasso a bull, you stop it in its steps. It stops immediately. So if you lasso in the sun, you stop the sun. That's just they just giving a very creative description of how the sun stopped. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to understand, indigenous people all around the world, their tales and oral traditions, they're basically, their legends are always very colorful and creative. They have a strong imagination, right? But what they're simply trying to say is that the sun stopped at a certain point. You know what I'm saying? At a certain point in time, the sun stopped. In Fiji, the natives tie the grasses growing on a hilltop over which they are passing when traveling from place to place. They do this to make a snare to catch the sun if he would try to go down before they reach the end of their day's journey. So in Fiji, a whole different island in the Pacific, they do this because they heard about the legend of Maui snaring the sun, because they thought it was Maui, but it was really Joshua. Joshua told the sun to stand still, and he did it. And the sun stood still. Now, this happened on the same day that Maui was sent to look for more land, and I wonder why. Why did Egypt need more land on the same time that Joshua was fighting the Amorites? Well, it's simple. Because this was like 40 years after the Exodus. Egypt was still in ruins because y'all put plagues on it. A lot of the land was burnt up. A lot of the food was still ate up. A lot of the population was still trying to recover. So they had to find more new land. They had to send Maui to look for more new land. This stuff is proving the scriptures right. It's proving the scriptures right, and also it's proving that the scripture took place on the Western Hemisphere, because the Pacific Ocean is in the Western Hemisphere. The Pacific Ocean, if the sun stopped over the Pacific Ocean, it also stopped over where? Western North America. Now, this is, the Strong's Concordance website that I'm about to show you. It says some have argued that evidence for this long day is found in other cultures. It is interesting to note that parallel accounts in the records of other nations show that the incident of Joshua's long day is not an isolated one. There is indisputable evidence from modern science and ethnology that such an event occurred, as Joshua records. In ancient Chinese writings, there is a legend of a long day. The Incas of Peru and the Aztecs of Mexico have a like record. There's a Babylonian and Persian legend of a day that was miraculously extended. Herodotus, an ancient historian, recounts that while in Egypt, the priest showed him their temple records, and that he read of a day which was twice the natural length of any day that had ever been recorded. But watch, you'll see that day is actually a morning time, or should I say a dawn. The sun was actually about to rise, but it stopped right there. And that's going to prove that that the Holy Land is truly in Western North America. Now, this is what the Egyptian hieroglyphics said, because we was just talking about the Egyptian. This is what the Egyptian hieroglyphics actually said. It said the sun, thrown into confusion, had remained low on the horizon, and by not rising, had spread terror amongst the great doctors. So there was a period when the sun was about to rise, right? But it did not rise. So it was basically kind of like a morning time, right? And that's Egypt. So America had basically an afternoon, right? The Pacific had basically like an afternoon when the sun stood still. But in Egypt, which is they're talking about the African Egypt. They're not talking about the American Egypt, because like I told you, there's two Egypts. There's two. And this one is in the African Egypt, because we're talking about the hieroglyphics that Herodotus was speaking of, and Herodotus was a Greek. And they talk about a morning time over there. So the Chinese account of Joshua's long day. The second secular source of Joshua's long day, which was mentioned by Totten, is based on what seems to be a recently lost ancient Chinese manuscript. And this is what it says. In the Chinese history, it is reported that in the same time of their seventh emperor, Yao, the sun did not set for 10 days, and men were afraid the world will be burnt. We know it wasn't 10 days. Them Chinese people were exaggerating. But we see that the Chinese has a myth of the sun staying still and the sun did not set. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to see why. Because, China is bordering the Pacific. You're going to see. I'm going to show you guys something. Now, this is what the Aztecs said, right? The deities, in order to save the universe and all living creatures inhabiting it, then took the sun from bows. And the wind god blew on the luminary with all his might, so that it would continue its run across the firmament. After some time, they managed to move the frozen in place sun and moon, and the world was saved. All right. So the sun was frozen in place. The moon was frozen in place in the sky. It was a day you could see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time. And I'm finna show you guys. The science in just a second. It was a day you could see the sun and the moon in the sky at the same time. The Aztecs are talking about it. And then the wind god blew the sun and then moved back. It started again. The world was saved. They got scared. People around the world were actually scared that the sun stayed still. In the Pacific Islands, they was actually happy, probably because they thought that Maui was like some amazing guy, and he was making. I guess that he was bringing up fish. He was attracting so many fish. He had magic, bro. He made the people of the island of Tonga. They loved him, right? Like he was able to do all kinds. Like, have you ever seen the movie Moana? Disney's Moana. Maui was worshipped as a demigod, but he was a regular man. He was able to do all kinds of things because he was from Egypt. He was a magician, and the sun stood still. But it wasn't from him. He never made the sun stand still. That was Joshua. It was the world's biggest misunderstanding. They thought it was Maui, but it was Joshua. But this is the Aztec take. They saw the sun and moon at the same time. Now, this is the Carrier Indians of British Columbia on Western Canada, right? The Carrier Indians of Western Canada, which is also Western North America. It says a boy went into the woods with his bow and arrows to shoot squirrels. One of the arrows stuck in top of the tree, and though he climbed and climbed, he could not reach it. He kept on climbing until he reached the sky, where he found a path. He took the string from his bow and made a snare across it. At midday, the sun came rolling across and was caught in the noose. So it was in the middle of the day in Western Canada. We see this noose or this rope, this snare for the sun. These other nations couldn't explain how the sun stopped. So of course they're going to say somebody stopped it. Or they're going to say some type of God stopped it and they made a rope to stop it because they're very creative in their mind. But the scripture just simply said Joshua told the sun to stand still. That's all that happened. You got to understand the amount of power that our people had. They were fighting in the middle of the summer, and I'm going to prove it was the summertime. They were fighting in the middle of the summer with the sun in the sky for a whole day, not complaining about the heat, not complaining that they're sweating, just annihilating their enemies. They didn't care it was hot. They didn't take a break to drink water. They was annihilating their enemies. And our people was so great that y'all decided to listen to Joshua's request and actually stop the sun. Something that never happened before. You know what I'm saying? It's an amazing thing when you really think about it. Imagine you're fighting 12 hours straight and the sun is beaming on you in one spot. Now, this is what the Incans had to say. The Incans in Peru. There was no dawn on that day for 20 hours. The Incans said that the sun did not rise. So it was nighttime in Peru. And I'm going to explain this. In Peru, they said the sun did not rise for 20 hours. So it was just pure darkness in Peru. And like I said, I'm going to explain this, man. To fit all those legends and myths that I read, this had to be the exact day. If we go to a day and night world map, it shows that it had to be on June 22nd that this happened. It had to be June 22nd. As you can see, the sun and the moon are in the sky at the same time, right? Just like the Aztec legend. As you can see, where the Aztecs live in Mexico, it was basically the evening, but you could still see the sun. The night was about to set on them. As you can see in Peru, it's completely dark, right? So the Incas had pure darkness. As you can see in Western North America, the sun is up. It's complete bright day. As you can see where the Carrier Indians lived in Canada, complete daylight, right? So it's fitting. And as you can see in modern Egypt, right? What is that? The sun is stopped at dawn, right? The sun is stopped at dawn, right? The sun is not rising. That fits the Egyptian legend that we read from the hieroglyphics. So everything is matching, and it shows that in the Middle East, it will be, the sun's still gonna be set at dawn. So in the Middle East, the day was still, you could still see some light, right? But it was brighter in the Western North America than it was in the Middle East. And as you can also see, all the islands of the Pacific is bright daylight, so that matches the description that we see with the legends of Maui. We can also see the Chinese legend that in China the sun is up, right? And they said Persia. When they say Persia, they really talking about the Achaemenid Empire, which is Iran, the real Persia in America, but they really meant Iran, right? In Iran, the sun, you can see the sun all day as well. So it's fitting. It's fitting this stuff all perfectly. We see night in the Incan Empire, which is Peru. We see day in Western North America. We see day in China, and we see daylight in the Pacific Ocean. So this is the date that it happened. This was June 22nd. I don't know what year, but this was June 22nd of some year when Joshua told the sun to stand still. It fits perfectly with the Middle East. It fits perfectly with America. It fits perfectly with Egypt. It fits perfectly with China and the Pacific Ocean. So with that, guys, I would like to say Shalom, Ubaraka, Mishpaka.